René. Team battle. Commando. Jinjo Crew. Take it. La réponse. Oh yeah. That's funky. Rockets. Wait. Oh, what is that? Woo! Ay. Ha ha. Yes, yo. Woo! Me boy Sky Team. Woo! Me boy Nick. Woo! Right. Ah ouais. He got the flow, baby. Yeah, baby. Look, man, no hands. Hop, quand même. Voilà. Oh, magnifique. Oh, la réponse.
Oh! We do have stickers, but one of the stickers that I have is this sticker right here that will label you as sane, so you can prove to your coworkers that you're actually sane. It's actually that design. It's exactly the design from that episode. So I can happily give these to you. However, what I wanted to say was I made a site at sane.science. Which is a test to prove whether or not you're sane. About 20 questions. It is, however, a gaslighting simulator. So that as you're doing the test itself is trying to prove to you that you're not insane. So you can do that now, you can do that later. I feel like you can do it during the talk if you want to be rude, because that's fine. But yeah, if you can prove yourself sane or insane, I actually have stickers for you on that.
Yes.
And I'll give it another 2, maybe 3 minutes here.
Voila!
Sorry, you want to go to sane.science. Sane.science. It is about 20 question, it describes itself as a gaslighting simulator. I actually talked to a clinical psychiatrist about what are the worst questions you could ask to somebody that was questioning their own sanity, and then turn that into a game.
Let's go. Allez, Ginger pour la réponse. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Five minutes to go. 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Bring the north south, we the public enemy. Bring the north south, we the public enemy.
What's that?
Oh, you want it?
All right, folks, let's do this thing. I love breakdancing. I try to share my love of breakdancing with the world. I just do want to set expectations. I am a appreciator of breakdancing as a spectator, not as a participant. So if you're expecting this as some sort of precursor to what you're going to see, hey, sorry, I'm going to talk about web shit instead. But that's okay. Hey, how's it going? My name's Lemon. Wait. Okay. All right, let's try this again. All right, I didn't bring the right energy. That was my fault. I'm going to bring the right energy, and then I think I can get the right energy back from you. Hi! Hi! Oh, I love that so much. I love that. Thank you. My name's Lemon, and I make websites. I've been making websites for over 20 years, and it's something that I've continued to love. I continue to be in this industry for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm not good at a whole lot of other things. Number two, I've worked manual labor. Not awesome at that particular thing. And the other thing is that it's always been the most interesting medium to me of producing sort of anything. I sort of like grew up in I don't know if any of you are familiar with the zine scene from the sort of like 90s and maybe even late 80s, where you would sort of like do these sort of Xerox covers, and that was very exciting, but your reach was small. You would get to the coffee shops and just sort of the people around that, and when the internet fully took hold and became that kind of distribution platform, it became something that continued to be fascinating for me, something that I continued to just be in love with. Because if you can make a website, you can make a website in a weekend. And the worst thing that can happen when you make a website is that just nobody goes to it. That's not true. Actually, the worst thing that can happen is you make a website and then a whole bunch of people go to it and it turns out to be embarrassing. That's probably the worst thing. But like a whole bunch of people have made very dubious amounts of money on that particular idea. But I love websites, and I continue to work on them because that medium is fascinating. And I work at a company called Savas Labs. They are a US agency, sort of mid-size, based in North Carolina. I've seen that office twice. But I am the front-end development director, and that means that my job is as much writing code as it is mentoring the other folks in my organization who do write code. And so that means a whole lot of mentoring and shepherding and documenting. I'm writing a lot of GitHub tasks, I'm reviewing a lot of pull requests, and I'm just sort of helping people level up their next skills, because one of the things that I recognized in like third wave sort of web development was that there was a lot of consternation and confusion about a lot of very, very smart people got into web technology. And when they got into web technology, they started to build these frameworks. And they built these frameworks that were more and more and more complicated. And then you had situations where folks were getting into this industry at the age of 19, and they were terrified of their own actual product because they didn't know what levels to touch. I was working on a talk a little while ago, and I had an interactive portion, and after that there was a sort of boot camp graduate who came up to me, And we were talking about the performance of his website. And I said, well, you're loading the same font 4 times, including the Vietnamese alphabet. Are you using the Vietnamese alphabet? No? OK, well, maybe you can get rid of that. And he said, OK, cool. How do I do that? And I was like, well, you want to remove that from the head. And he was like, where is the head? And that's a little bit his fault, but that's some of the fault of the actual organization that's behind it, because a lot of that thing has come down to say, like, there's a whole bunch of super smart people, and you're just the guy that figures out how to push these pixels around, how to change these colors. So I make websites, and I want to define my terms as that when I mean websites, I actually don't mean apps. Now, obviously, a website can be an app. There is the very concept of web apps. I've definitely built things that I've commercialized and sold and distributed as web apps, but I don't traditionally work in the sort of app field. I've written some React Native. I've written some React Native fairly recently, but I don't do that as a sort of like matter of course. Because that's just sort of like not where my greater skills lie. Because I think that a lot of the things that we want to do here can actually be communicated by a website, an actual honest-to-God website. And some of these app niceties sometimes are not worth the trade-off, in my particular opinion. So when I mean websites, I actually just mean these languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And no matter what you're doing when you're building a website, you're always coming back to this. If you're doing Ruby, if you're doing PHP, if you're doing Razor, like whatever it is, you're still bringing that thing down to HTML. And it is good to know, I write a lot of Pug. I think Pug's great. But that just helps me write a little bit faster to know that it's still going back to HTML. I do Sass a little bit less now, because like CSS is getting more interesting, but I still know that it's coming down to CSS. And then JavaScript is a hornet's nest of horrors and calamity, but I still know that it's going to be happening here. So a lot of times in my career, I will have a situation where a client will come up and say to me, like, I want you to build me a website. And I go like, that's great, man. That's great. That's fantastic. I also want to build a website. Let's you and me build a website together. Let's figure out what you're looking for. You're going to bring up some stupid ideas, and I'm going to go, that's an interesting idea that you have there. Let's talk about why, you know, and why you want your logo to be like half of the actual web page itself. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there, and we're going to probably make something like fairly cheap and fairly direct, because as long as we can build a website, we can get there with a certain amount of efficiency that I think we'll both be happy with. So that's how this goes a lot of times. But sometimes the client says to me, I want you to build me a mobile app. And in those cases, when they say to me, hey, I want you to build me a mobile app, I go, okay, well, like, sure, but like, based on what you're trying to do, maybe a mobile app is going to afford some externalities that you might not be looking forward to budgeting, you might not be looking forward to add to your timetable. And so I'm not saying that's the wrong decision. Sometimes it definitely is. There's a reason why there's a lot of app companies in the world. Sometimes it absolutely is the right decision. But let's talk about what you're trying to do, and let's figure out maybe it makes sense for us to build a website instead. And then sometimes the client says to me, I want you to build me a mobile app, and I'll pay you a lot of money to do it. And I go like, that's awesome. That's great. I love that. Let's absolutely just, yeah, okay. Let's build a mobile app. Fantastic. And in the past, like I said, I'm doing a little bit more of the sort of like React Native kind of like thing to answer this question. But in the past, what I've done is I've built these things out using something called Cordova, which is the Apache project, or another thing called PhoneGap, which is Apache was Cordova, and then Adobe was the PhoneGap. And I'd sort of do those things and essentially like build out, for all intents and purposes, a website. And then these things would sort of like create a external layer that would transpile this into native app code. And that's cool, but there's something that's really, really fun about relying on existing technologies, which is that if you do that, they can say, hey, we're Adobe, and you remember that software you just made? We're bored of it. We don't want to do anything with it anymore. And so, yeah, your thing is flushed. The PhoneGap app you built, hope you never want to update it again, because if you do, you're screwed. So went into Cordova, and I want to tell you a little bit about what it takes to build an app in Cordova, which is essentially you will build an HTML website in the traditional way that you might kind of like do these things. You would wrap that in a vendor-specific web view, which is either the Safari thing or the Android one is Chrome. The fact I always love to share is that if you're working on an iPhone device and you're using any browser that calls itself whatever, Firefox, you're not. If you're on an iOS device and you're using web browser, it's actually Safari. It's part of the terms of service. Anyway, so you would do these things. You'd wrap this in the vendor-specific sort of web view. You know, there's sometimes a little bit of jank there, but it's usually OK. You're going to add in a whole bunch of plugins, and you're going to release it to the store. But therein actually lies the problem. Because now you didn't do a website. You didn't do something that was sort of anarchic, and you can just reproduce it. You wanted to put this thing into their process. So you're going to have to do a couple things here. You're going to have to do an app signing process. You're going to have to, for example, put JDK, the Java development kit, on your thing if you want this to be in the Play Store. If you're going to do this through the iOS, you're actually going to need to have it go through like Xcode. You're probably going to have it touch a Mac at some point in the process because that's just sort of like part of their considerations. And those plugin versionings are an actual thing. Those plugin versionings can be all over the place, and they can be incompatible with each other. And nothing's more fun than figuring out a whole bunch of conflicting JavaScript libraries. So you've also got the idea of these style and content rules, which is to say that like you'll have somebody at the top that will say, you know, you remember with that thing where for a little while on the iOS field, they just got obsessed with this idea of everything has to have the thinnest possible line. Every icon is going to have this like really thin line, and that's just what this looks like. And you know, someone like Yoni Eve can wake up in the morning and be like, I've decided that our brand is changing, and in fact, you are on the hook for those kind of changes because your app can be incompatible with their style and guideline rules. They can send your app back to say it does not look like our design, which means that you can get rejected. You can get rejected and you can be surprised by it. And you're also going to have a period of waiting. So I want to tell you a true story of this is an actual thing that happened to me at some point in the past. By the way, this movie rules. Probably one of my favorite things David Byrne has ever done. Stephen Tobolowsky and John Goodman. Really, really great movie. Anyway, this is a true story of something that happened in my past, which is that I built a mobile app. And I built a mobile app in exactly the way I was describing. Did the thing, wrapped it in Cordova, like it was fine. It was an actual conference app, specifically, not this conference, but another one. And what they were looking for was essentially like, you know, the schedules and the maps or whatever of like, here's where all the vendors are, that kind of thing. You can imagine it. And that went fine. We got up to the store. Everyone was okay. We had a pretty good install base. Everything was doing pretty good. But then I had to make a tiny little change. Because, of course, a vendor dropped out, and we didn't have the concept of the map inside of the actual CMS. We had that inside of the actual code base, and so we had to make an actual code base to change the layout of how these vendors were in here. And so that meant that I had to actually do an update and submit my update to the store. So I did that, and then I got an email from Google Play Support. And they said to me, we have rejected your latest build from the Google Play Store because it violates our policy on embedded YouTube videos. And they said, please see this web page. There's a whole bunch of text which like kind of describes what we're talking about. Now, a lot of us haven't met each other before. I'm from Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is sort of a place that's known for being polite. I think that politeness is very important. I like to be polite because sometimes I think that that's the right way to go about things, both ethically and just sort of to get the way you want. So I do always try to start these conversations polite. And I said, thank you so much. Really appreciate your note. That's really super helpful. The thing is, my app actually doesn't have any YouTube videos. So, you know, where do you want to go from here? And they said, the embedded YouTube videos in your app violate our policy on embedded YouTube videos. Okay. that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. We can stay on this track. We can get there. We can see our way through. So I said, like, the app actually doesn't have any YouTube videos of any sort, so, like, you know, please advise. And then Google Play Support, after about 3 days, wrote an email back to me. And they said, we do not offer support. Google Play Support sent an email back to me saying, we do not offer support. Now, of course, you get this particular message and you find that infuriating, or at least I did. I hope you might. But it's also a reality of the ecosystem itself. If you think about the ecosystem that exists, you've got something around the range of like 4 million different apps in the Google Play Store ecosystem. You've got, I think, maybe 1.5 million over on the iOS, and all of these are supposed to be built through manual review. They just don't have it. They will never have it. So yeah, like if I was, you know, an engineering executive at like Uber, I'm sure that I could get somebody. But in fact, over here, what I have is just a situation of like, I'm a tiny little minnow here, and you're just sort of, there's nothing else that I can do. And so in fact, what I actually did in this particular case was I sat on it for a couple, like, I think a week or so. And then I made like an inconsequential like code change. I just like renamed some classes and like moved around some CSS. And I was like, okay, what about that? And they were like, yep, that's great. Yep, got it. Yep, totally cool. Totally cool. The internet, of course, is not a walled garden. This ecosystem that is at the behest of your Apples and your Googles and your Microsofts, or something that benefits them. And sometimes, if it's a thing that benefits you as well, if you're looking for that App Store discovery, then there's reasons to opt into that. But the internet's not that. We created a system that, on its face, is insane. Which is to say that, like, anybody here in this room says to any user, they say, hey, what I want to do is I want to write arbitrary code that responds to stimulus. I want to write arbitrary code, and I want to run that locally on your machine. We did it. Like, and we got a whole bunch of weird shit along the way. We had our pop-ups, we had our like weird situations, but we actually created a system where we can allow arbitrary code to be executed on somebody else's machines. And because we're there, we should not give up on it. So I want to rewind back in time to that initial conversation where I just built this mobile app over here in Cordova and say, like, what could I have done differently? And the thing that I actually could have said is, okay, so when you say you want a mobile app, what is it actually that you really want? You know, and this is a hypothetical conversation. I have not talked to this client in some time. So I don't have the answers that they would be giving me, but I can guess. I can guess what they might say. And so we're going to go through this hypothetical, and the client might have said to me, well, okay, I want something that, like, it has an app-like interface. When you push on the little thing to open up my app, I want it to look like an app. I want it to be natively installed on their machine. I want it to exist alongside every other app that they might have. I'm going to want it to work on offline. I might be like in a weird place, or I might be using Australian internet. And so that might be something that I need to work around. Maybe I want to use the camera or the microphone. Maybe I want to use geolocation. There's a whole bunch of other things that they might have said, this is what I want from our app. But what they probably would say first is like, I want push notifications. Like that's really, I don't even want an app. What I really want is just a thing that gives push notifications to somebody. So we can actually do all of this with a progressive web app. So the progressive web app is not actually a bespoke piece of tech. It's actually a spec. It's a spec written on top of the W3C's considerations for what a website is. And it's a spec written by broadly 3 companies. You've got Google sort of did a lot of the initial legwork on this. Mozilla and Microsoft spent a bunch of time in the second half of it to sort of like get it there. And eventually the other ones came. So this is supported by Safari, it's supported by Brave, it's supported by Opera, it's supported by Vivaldi, it's supported by, I don't know, whatever sort of wackadoo browser you want to have is a spec that they will all acknowledge. It doesn't mean that you're going to install a thing that's like PWA.dll. It means that you're going to have some pieces of code that a bunch of these browsers will recognize as PWA features, and then they will institute those things or implement those things inside of the app that's running on the machine. So what actually is PWA? Well, I mean, it's potentially a lot of things. But what a PWA can be is it can be installable. In fact, it probably is. It's probably something where you've got some sort of interface that we're going to look at in a tiny little bit that's going to be like, hey, I want this to exist on my machine. And I want it to have its own sort of storage packet to live as an actual app like any other app might. We can have it something that's going to work offline. We're going to have our push notifications. We're going to have managed caching, meaning that we can actually control, in the case of a traditional website, you've got the idea of managing what's going to come over the wire versus what's actually cached in your browser, and you can kind of control those sort of things. You can run this thing chromeless if you choose to, meaning that you don't actually have the address bar on top. You've got it sort of existing in a full screen situation. You can play with weight control, which I've always felt. Has anyone ever played Jackbox games at all? Yes. Yeah, they're now up to they just announced 11. I've always been a big fan of the company and like so much of what they do. There's so much creativity there. But to those of you that haven't seen this thing, essentially what you have is you have any device. It doesn't matter. It's a Windows machine or it's a Mac or it's a Xbox, whatever it is, and you'll have that thing as a host, and then everybody basically plays on their phone. They type in a website, and they enter in a code, and then they're all playing together, usually in the same room. But this was definitely a thing that like was a COVID boom because you could do it sort of like in calls, and so everyone was sort of playing this thing on their phone. The one thing that's always surprised me is that the Jackbox TV thing will essentially you'll have these periods where you're just not touching your phone because you're there's somebody else is playing, or you're doing some sort of like whatever. And I've got my lock screen like pretty tight. So like there's not a lot of time that my phone is going to be untouched and just sort of like whatever. So I'll get dropped. It'll continue to sort of like go into sleep mode, and then it'll get weird. With the PWA, you can actually do that. You can say that like if my app actually is in focus, I want to overwrite what your weight controls might be. We can have multi-touch, we can have our squeezy pulley, whatever. We can have our Bluetooth, we can have like NFC. There's a whole bunch more, and that's fascinating. But what do we need for this? Okay, so there's 3 things really in order to make this work. If we're getting outside of the idea of localhost, then we're going to need an HTTPS connection. We're going to need a manifest file. Manifest.json is probably the thing that you want to call this thing. And you're going to need a service worker. I always call that service worker.json just because that's how I know that it's service worker, but it can be called anything. We're going to go through all 3 of these here. So first of all, HTTPS. I mean, lots of people have talked to you about HTTPS. I mean, it's just so easy at this point to do it. So like, if you're curious about doing this for free, I do a whole bunch of static deployments on GitHub pages, which I just love because I've made games before that have been discovered by PewDiePie, which is not great because that's not the audience I want. However, it means that all of a sudden I recognize that my traffic went from here to like there. And if I do that in something like GitHub Pages, I go like, yeah, man, this would be a DDoS if I had to care about this, but like that's Microsoft's problem. Like, So if you can do these things like in that situation, Let's Encrypt is cool, although you have to actually do a reprovisioning of those Let's Encrypt scripts every 6 months. It's a little bit annoying, and so like Cloudflare is a great one to do that with. If you can manage your thing, route that through Cloudflare, then you can get your DNS, your HTTPS in the middle layer. And then if you're doing something where you've got like a cPanel hosting, lots of those will do that as well. And that's actually through the Let's Encrypt. So OK, there's our HTTPS. There's a lot of ways to do that. But we're going to do that. We're going to turn all of our HTTPS traffic to, or all of our HTTP traffic to HTTPS, which it's not going to work as a PWA unless we have that. And now we're all set. OK, so now we're going to need a manifest file. And that's going to be a JSON file. It's located in the root of your project. It's referenced in the actual core HTML file. And it's going to have some values. It's going to have a name and description. It's going to have a color scheme. We're going to have some languages. We're going to have orientation. We're going to have the concept of URL scope. And like a lot of icons, because the thing that they never managed to get into the spec is that you can't use SVGs, which means you have to use a whole bunch of pre-composed pings, which means you have to make a whole bunch of pre-composed pings. Way too many. Anyway, so we've got that, and then we've got our service worker. That's going to be a single JavaScript file. Can be called anything you like. It's going to set up our functions for installation. It's going to have caching, permissions, features. It could reference other things if you needed it to, but we're going to have that single service worker. We're going to reference both of those in our HTML. And then we've actually changed the way that our website is consumed. Now, this is, I think, the most important part of this particular process is to recognize that we change the way that a user consumes our website. And that means that usually with a website, somebody goes to da-da-da.html, and essentially what happens is the browser goes like, OK, cool. You're using like moment.js from a CDN, and I've already got that in cache, so I'm going to use that. You're using this image, but I actually already have that image, so I'm going to pull that out of cache. But you're also using like this piece of JavaScript, and I don't have that. So it's going to make these determinations when it builds out the actual page load, all of the, hey, clear your cache, refresh kind of thing. So it's going to make these determinations to go, I know that I have this stuff in cache. I know that I don't have these things, and I'm going to make as many HTTP requests as I need to in order to get all the stuff that I think I'm missing based on what I know. And that's just what the browser does. But we've changed that because we've said that the user is actually going to first go to our service worker. And our service worker gets to control those things. Our service worker can, for example, say, I've got this image. I do not anticipate it changing. So go ahead and just store that literally forever. As long as they're installed, this is going to be kind of part of the installation package. If they want to get rid of it, they would have to actually uninstall this thing. So we can control different things and how long they are stored. And we can also control what happens if you might be online versus offline. We can control what would happen if you need to access a file and you think it might be expired, but you're not sure. So we can set up a whole bunch of rules about like where these things are pulled. Service work is going to get a lifestyle. But we're going to see some real-world examples here. And the first real-world example I actually have for you is this is a technical conference, and so I think we're all serious people that are interested in serious software that solves serious problems. And so that's why I built party.party is a button that helps you party. So we're just going to go to this website right here. And this, of course, is accessible for any URL or any browser that you want. And what we've got here is, we've got a question mark. But what we really have that matters is we have our button that will help you party.
Party, 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 party.
So we can see that
party, party, ooh, party, 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 party,
it's going to kind of count up our parties. And
what's that you say?
The faster we type it, the more it's going to build up momentum to our parties.
Let me hear you holler.
And eventually, if we can queue up enough parties,
let me hear you holler.
We can actually get ourselves to maximum party, where it will play the Venga Boys.
Party. Let me hear you holler.
Let's get a little bit more Venga Boys.
Party. Party. party, 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 party.
Now, of course, worth noting that I have, like a little bit of logging on this thing so that I have some knowledge of like how long people have partied, because we are counting. I'm not sending each and every one of these things back, but like I've looked at that Redis server before and like, wow, 300,000 parties. That's a good one. This is obviously a pretty bare bones operation, right? We've got an HTML file. We've got some JavaScript. I've got a little library called Howler that's doing the actual mechanics behind it. But this was all fine. I launched this. People enjoyed it. I was having fun, and then I kind of forgot about it, because it was one of those things where it's like anything, like a lot of these other things, it can exist on GitHub pages. You can use it if you want. The only thing I really have to do is pay for the domain, and a .party is not expensive. So like, this can exist in eternity without me really having to think about it. But then somebody, a friend of mine, was actually out camping, and she said to me, "Hey, I was outside of like a 3G signal, and I wasn't able to actually use the thing. I couldn't actually party. I was outside of the global internet, and I couldn't party because I didn't have internet." Like, okay, well, we can actually solve this immediately. So what we did in this particular case was just build out an initial service worker. And so my service worker here is essentially, I'm creating a situation where I'm going to say, if somebody's got this installed locally on their device, these are the mission critical files that I absolutely need to make sure that you have all of the time to help you party. There's not a whole lot of these. We've got our actual index.html file. We've got like our manifest itself. I've got a CSS, for that sort of thing. This site uses jQuery. Whatever, fight me. That Howler thing is the thing that makes those sound clips like work pretty nice. And then we've got sort of two different things. We've got the background, that's the karaoke version of Venga Boys' Boom 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 Boom. And then I have a single MP3 of all of the parties together that have like sprite marks, so that rather than actually having, whatever it is, 300 different MP3s, there's just one that like goes to the right sort of like period of time. That's all you need. It's not a lot. The install base is like 100K or something like that. That's not true. It's bigger than that, but it's not that much bigger now. Anyway, so the other thing we're going to say is, okay, so if somebody's going to install this thing, I need you to make sure that we have the ability to install this. And then when there's a fetch, the very first thing I want you to do is I want you to just check to see if we actually have internet access. Because if we do have internet access, and our internet access is nice and clean, hey, I don't know, maybe I changed something. Maybe I made a version of it that's on siesta or whatever. Like, maybe something changed. Probably not, honestly. But if you don't have internet, then you can just go ahead and grab whatever you actually have out of local cache. And you can feel free to use that safely, like in perpetuity. And so in doing that, then I had to move on to our manifest.json. So we've got our little version there. We've got our name, party, and then we've got our short name, party, and then we have our description, which I think you'll find is very descriptive of the actual app itself. You can define a default locale, which is something that I have never played with. I think if I was ever to work on this thing again, this is probably what I would touch, is to make a version of it that can work for every language that you might want to party in. We've got a scope. We've got a starting URL. The scope would be that you could have a situation where if you wanted to say, I've got this entire website and only this part works as a PWA, you can define that sort of as a scope. And when you launch it, go to this particular URL set. Theme color is going to be sort of the trim. The background color is going to be the splash screen. And then, like I said, way too many images. That's actually not even accurate. There's more images than exist there. Then we're going to go into our HTML file, and we're basically going to say, hey, I would sure love you to install this thing install this service worker if you can. That's all we got. And doing that specific thing, we actually create this situation. Now, there's other ways that I can do this thing, but the important thing I want you to know is that like this little banner here, I didn't make that. This little banner here is actually something that is thrown on by, maybe it'll be Firefox. I'm not sure what browser that is. But each browser is basically going to say, like, I can create local install of this. Would you like to? And those things are actually going to be based on those sort of browser rules. So they might be, for example, like it might show it to you immediately, like when you first come to it. Another browser might say, like, I don't want to show this banner until you've returned here or whatever. They can change those rules over time. You can also do this with your own JS call, but it'll actually throw up this banner to say, do you want to install this to your home screen? I go ahead and do that thing, and then I've actually got this existing natively alongside all of my other apps, right? So I've got this existing both on the home screen itself. I actually can pull up my app drawer, and it'll show up in the app drawer alongside everything else. And honestly, look the same. The splash screen is not the most exciting thing in the world when I actually click on that. But when I've got it, then I can actually click on Party. I brought this thing up, and now I've got something that exists without any sort of address bar. It's got full bleed. And the other thing that's happening here is that this actually can exist inside of its own thread. So what you're looking at here is something that I installed in Brave, which means it's part of Brave's own, it's installing as a Brave instance, except for it exists separately from Brave. So I can close Brave, but I can keep Party up, or vice versa. This is not memorized as a tab. This is a separate parallel app running alongside the other one. So testing, of course, is important in this, and in this case, I strongly recommend really just Lighthouse. Lighthouse used for a whole bunch of things. I'm also in Brave right here, but like, if you are ever doing like accessibility testing or whatever it is that you like, you can actually just pull up your inspector. This is pretty much everything but Firefox is going to have this in here. And then I can say, I just want to get this as a PWA. Oh, that changed. I'm not going to inspect that thing. But essentially, you can take this is the web dev measure, and we can take this thing and essentially go turn red marks into green. So when you start off with this, you're going to have something that obviously doesn't work as a PWA, but you're going to kind of like, it'll say, it doesn't work yet as a PWA, here's what you can do about that. There's a screenshot of it. So that's what it used to look like before that changed. But essentially, this is what we've got, right? We've got our situation of all of our green check marks, and we're going to have a bunch of red check marks, and we're just going to kind of like turn those in. So my strategy for this is very, very, because of, again, that versioning layer for the service worker and making sure that this is right. Get this thing tested locally. Make sure it's working on your machine. Get those reds to go green on your machine. Then try it out in some sort of control where like you might have a situation where like somebody has to like go into inspector and like delete service worker because like if you do some weird stuff, you might have to like reset this thing. And so you don't want to obviously bring that onto your users. So that first launch, the first time that you do a service worker, I'm just saying this because it was a thing that happened to me, it was a little bit frustrating. The first time that you launch the service worker out, make sure that you've got a test that's working on everyone's machine. Then you're good, because now you can version it from there. Another one I want to point out is another site that I made called Damndog, and And this is based on my own obsession with WikiHow. I love WikiHow. I've loved WikiHow for years. So this is a guessing game of different WikiHow images, right? So we're going to go through this pretty fast here, but okay, so I don't even like that one. Let's just go and let's try another one here. Okay, cool. That's a great drawing. So is this how to stay calm around an ex, how to chew gum, how to be a true hip-hop artist, or how to make yourself famous on YouTube? Guesses? Was it? The first one. Okay, great. How to stay calm around an ex. You are correct. Congratulations. These are all actual images from WikiHow and also actual titles. How to be a hipster girl, how to put on pantyhose, how to be a good wife, how to resist sexual desires by following Islamic traditions. Guesses?
How to be hipster girl.
Hipster girl. Ooh, you guys are good at this. You folks are good. All right, we're gonna do one last, wow, yeah, excellent, okay. So how to create urban rainforest, how to be a male housewife, how to calm down quickly, how to control rosacea. You're a male housewife. Perfect. Congratulations. So this is something that I do end up working on a little bit more than I've worked on, like the party, because WikiHow continues to fascinate me. And what's important here is that what's not happening is there's no API here. There's no automation here. This is specifically images that I find funny and article titles that I find funny. That's the criteria. I have to find this funny in order for this to happen. So you've got like a JS file of here's all the things, and I will update it when usually people will message me and go check out this one, which means that there is actually a fixed number of rounds. We're going to get to that in just a sec. So one of the things I did here was essentially build a service worker that does a little bit different work. And the thing that I did here was pretty much the whole thing. This one's written in Vue. We've got our damn dog, but I actually described an offline HTML file. And the reason why was that what I didn't want to do was make this thing actually exist offline, because in order to do that, I would have to cache quite a lot of images on your thing. And that's possible, but I didn't feel like it was reasonable to cache all of these images on your actual device. So instead what I did was created offline look, so that if you are going to this, you can get in. Here you are in, that one's Chrome, and you've got a little interface there to install this thing locally on your device. And then when you do that, you have this. So this is Chrome. It just exists sort of like an Electron app to me. That's sort of what that always looked like. And then when you visit it in an offline environment, you get this. Now that's not the most exciting thing, but I just kind of wanted to give an offline version that exists because I wanted to do some sort of other interesting things here. And one of those interesting things was that, hey, sometimes people forget that the Microsoft Store exists. Why? You know why. But Microsoft knows the Microsoft Store exists, and they want to get more stuff in there. And so what they've been able to do is say, hey, if you can give us the actual specs of your PWA, we'll host your PWA in the Microsoft Store alongside everything else. So I did that. I said, OK, so here's my thing. It's called Damn Dog. You can find that in the Microsoft Store if you feel like it. And that gave this sort of thing. And the thing that I found interesting was that they got some screenshots there of the actual thing, but they said, yeah, it's available on the PC, the mobile device, the hub, and also the HoloLens. So if you want to play Damn Dog in augmented reality, you're definitely welcome to do that. But we can get even fancier with this, right? Because this is what I really wanted to talk about, was that if you are going into this sort of situation, you can see that there is a round count that I update every time I actually update the rounds, so that you know how many rounds are available. So what I can do is I can actually send out a notification to say, hey, I updated these actual things. If you've been playing this for a while and you need some new rounds, I got something new in there. So we can go through the notification ABI and we can actually say, okay, so the thing has been updated. I added 7 new rounds. I can have a little icon that exists over here in the corner. The commented bit out is that you can actually control vibration, which I found just a fun little toy that you can go when they get the notification, I want it to go neat, 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 you know, like whatever. You can also put that in the tag in case you've got like categories of different notifications that you want to do. And there it is. Like there it is coming from localhost that we said like damn dog has been updated. Now obviously this is something that I've just got happening here like in an actual like JS push. But there's one thing that I wanted to talk about, which is that I'm going to go here to Product Hunt, and it's going to do something that I find really frustrating, which is that the moment I went to Product Hunt, and this is not unique to them, they said, hey, would you allow me to show me notifications? I just got here, man. Like, we haven't done anything. We haven't, hello, can we sit down? Can we converse for a minute? This, like anything else, is a JavaScript call. Every time you're asking for these permissions, be it camera, location, whatever it is, prove to me why. Prove to me why you need my location, and I'll give it to you if I feel like it's necessary. But don't do this thing right away to say, I need permissions for this thing, because like, I kind of want to leave at that point. So how do you push to users not currently on a website? I mean, really like anything else, right? There's Firebase will do it, Twilio will do it, OneSignal will do it. Essentially, Firebase is the one that I've used the most in this particular case, but essentially anything that you've got, which is like Pusher, and I feel like push.io is one. But anyway, anything that you've got that is a situation that will do notifications, you can do that in a PWA like you would do with any native mobile app. So where do you go from here? I mean, from here, it's just about getting cooking. So I'm going to give you a couple pieces of resources here. There's the actual PWA builder, which is something from Microsoft, which I've found. One of my junior developers made something that I wanted to help her make this a PWA, and this is sort of where we started. And so what you can do here is you can actually give it your URL, and it'll say, this isn't a PWA. And here's some boilerplate files that you could use to make this a PWA. You've got little forms that you can fill in. I wouldn't say that this is the best way to like make a super production ready thing, but it'll probably give you a lot of the boilerplate stuff to start with. Like this is honestly pretty nice as an actual like first step. There's WebDev, which is from Google. There's a whole PWA section to it, which is sort of like the idea of PWA news, because the spec does get updated. Different things change. What PWA can do today, I've found very, very helpful, because we have a idea of the different sort of like capacities that you've got. Made something really recently that only exists on, but I made something where you can basically use an NFC chip to control other things, and I wanted to kind of prove that I could do that from a purely PWA thing, and it does work out pretty good. So you've got a situation of like all of these different capacities that can exist in a PWA, and if you click on them, different examples, what PWA can do today. Will give you, again, sort of boilerplate code to kind of go from. And then finally, this thing by Dave Geddes. This used to be a paid thing for, I feel like $199, but they got a sponsorship from Google, maybe? Anyway, point being that you can actually do this for free. And this is not going to be the kind of thing that's going to be like documentation. This is a video game. And it's not a bad video game. It sort of like has this like interesting kind of like Hollow Knight look to it. Australia. And it was an interesting thing to look at, because it was a bunch about, you know, this community of these sort of service workers like learning about how service workers exist, and it kind of like gets you into what I think is the most challenging part about the PWA, is like understanding the service worker and understanding like how we're actually intercepting the browser traffic. And finally, I just want to say that when you're thinking about progressive web apps, the most important thing is to think about them like as progressive. This is something that you're going to be starting off with a site built like any other website. You know, it's an HTML file, or it's a PHP file, or it's whatever it is that you're serving over to your folks, and you're just saying, like, this would be cool if we also had this. We would be able to do more things if we had geofencing. And you can add that specific thing. You can add the installable bit. But they are all progressive things. And so when you can pitch this thing, for example, like to a product owner, like to a VP, to some sort of executive, and say, like, we could accomplish some of these from a PWA, recognize that these can be done at once. We don't need to actually go through these checklists one by one. So I'd actually just take out these pieces, do these features incrementally, recognizing that we can add or remove or change these things over time. And so I want to just implore you to kind of like think about these features and think about how, if you're working in some forms of development where it might be appropriate, that it's possible. It's possible for you to get a little bit better, to do something that nobody actually thought you could do with your baby little technology, and to do something that truly is impressive. Escape the walled garden, make things better. It's your responsibility and your pleasure. And that's me. Yeah, thank you so very much. My name, once again, is Lemon. I will be around if anyone wants to have any conversations or talks or whatever. I'm also doing a 2-hour workshop tomorrow about accessibility, if you're interested in that. But I've got some stickers as well. I've got some Lemon stickers that I would love you to have if you want to have some of those. I have a site that's nothing but stupid video games that I've made called Kinda Fun, and so I have a sticker called I Like Stuff That's Kinda Fun. And again, if you have proved yourself as either sane or insane, I would love for you to have one of these as well. But thanks once again. That's my daughter.